Admittedly, if you're new to Illustrator, the whole premise of using the pen tool and editing those anchor points can be somewhat daunting. The good news is that when you're using Illustrator, you don't need to go there at all. In fact, there are plenty of tools that will allow you to edit and create shapes, even customize shapes, with just a few steps, and it's actually pretty easy to do that. So why did I take you through the steps of actually learning all those things about anchor points and working with the pen tool and the convert anchor point tool and so on and so forth? That's because those are core concepts of understanding exactly what's happening behind the scenes when you create graphics inside of Illustrator. Now that we even have that basic knowledge, when we start to do other things inside of Illustrator, even with some of the more advanced tools and some of the editing tools that we'll get used to using, we'll have a much better understanding of exactly what can and can't be done. More importantly, when we then need to make small little minor tweaks and edits to those shapes that we create, we'll have a much easier time doing so. So let's get started with showing you how to take primitive shapes that you've created, such as shapes with the closed primitive shape tools like rectangles and ovals and so on and so forth, and see how you can create some complex shapes without a lot of effort. And what helps you do that is an entire panel inside of Illustrator called the Pathfinder panel. It basically allows you to manipulate or work with paths. To show you how easy it is to get started with that, I'm going to open up a file here called compoundshapes.ai. Again, you'll find it in your exercise folders for Chapter 5. I'm also going to go to the window menu here. I'm going to choose to open up the Pathfinder panel, which comes up right over here. Let's put it right over here so it's not in our way of the graphics that we have here. And what I basically have in this document is 4 shapes. That's all that I've created. And these are shapes that you already know how to create because we've used these tools before. I have one circle here, or actually it's an oval. I have another oval here, so these two ovals basically overlap each other. And then I have 2 squares that I've created, and I've rotated them somewhat. And that's basically all that I have. And my goal is to create the outline or the shape of a surfboard. You might think, oh man, a surfboard like some of the shapes that we created, I have to use the pen tool, I have to use a variety. No, we're not going there right now. We're basically starting off with very simple, basic, primitive shapes. And we're going to build complex shapes using them. And that's because we could always basically use parts. Think of it as one big junkyard that's out there. You have all these big circles and ovals and rectangles and a junkyard. And now you want to be able to create something. Now you're going to be like the MacGyver. You're going to go ahead and you're going to say, give me 2 ovals and give me 2 squares, and we'll end up with a surfboard. That's really what it is when you start working with Illustrator and Pathfinder. So what Pathfinder does, it allows you to take, at the minimum, 2 paths and perform some kind of operation to those 2 paths to come up with a new path. Now, there are different kinds of those, and we're going to deal with here in this particular video. In the Pathfinder panel, there's a top part of it here called Shape Modes. And we're going to deal with these 4 shape modes. This one is here called Unite. This one's called Subtract. This one's called Intersect and Exclude, and they have different things that are able to be done with them. And let's explore just a few of them. What the first one does, Add or Unite, what it does is it basically allows you to take 2 shapes and combine them as if they were one shape. So let's see how that works. If I were to now take my regular selection tool, I'm going to click and drag to marquee select both of these circles right here, these ovals that I've created. Now, if I were to go ahead now and click on this button right here called Unite or Add, it now combines those 2 into one big shape. Now, before you might think I would need to know how to use the pen tool to create smooth anchor points and then have a change direction point. No, we're not even thinking about that because all we've done is created 2 shapes and combine them into one. Let me press Command-Z to undo that, or Control-Z on Windows. If I take the exact same 2 ovals again, and I go to this one over here, which is Subtract. If I click on that one, I see that basically it took the topmost oval, that one was on top in the stacking order of my document, and it subtracted it from this shape over here, which kind of leaves me like some kind of a bowl. So again, there are many different kind of shapes. I'm going to press Command-Z that's there. I'm going to skip to this one over here, which is called Exclude. If I click on that, it basically combines them except for the parts that overlap. So if I were to give this a fill color right now, it has a fill of none, but if I give it a fill, you see what it did was it created one big shape, but the part over here, the shape that was kind of overlapping, is actually transparent. It's hollow. There's actually nothing that's here at all. So the path is the top and the bottom, but nothing here in the middle. Once again, I'll press Undo, and I'll press Undo again to go back to the original shape here. So now I have 2 separate circles. What I really want, though, is just this middle section here, which would act as the main part of my surfboard. So by selecting these 2 ovals right here, I'm going to choose this option here, which is called Intersect. Intersect means keep the parts of the object that overlap each other, but remove everything else. And by doing that, I'm now left with just a shape that looks like this. Here's the basic part of my surfboard. Now I'm going to go to these 2 squares that I've created. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select both of them. Now I have both of them selected, just another way to select the objects. And in this case here, I want to combine them into one shape. So what I'll do here is I'll go to the Unite option and click that, and now that gets converted into one shape that's right there. If I now take this particular object and I choose Object, Arrange, and I'm going to say bring to front, right? So now that one sits in the top of the stacking order. By selecting both this shape and this shape, I can now choose this one called subtract or minus front, and now I'm left with the shape of a surfboard. So what I did was I created a more complex shape, one of a surfboard, but all I did to create that was 2 ovals and 2 squares. That's really all that it was to it. So when you work with Pathfinder, you really find that you can create more complex shapes without a lot of work. Again, the key here, though, is your ability to be able to look at a graphic or look at something that you're trying to create and try to break it down into its basic core primitive elements. If you have, a basic example would be a snowman, create 3 circles, have them all overlap a little bit, and then unite them all together. Then you have one shape that's that way. But as you create any logos or any artwork or so on and so forth, see where those particular parts of the graphic might be made out of very simple primitive objects. Then use Pathfinder tools to make all that happen.